In the State Archive of Venice, in the section of Foreign Policy Correspondence of the Council of Ten, under Archival Code 412-A, lies a parchment document dated August 14, 1488. This document is a secret report by the Venetian resident Girolamo Donato, to which is attached a fragment of a wax impression from a signet ring depicting 3 intertwined snakes and a monogram not recorded in the official heraldic registries of the Roman Curia. This artifact, retrieved during renovation work from a hidden recess in the wall of the right wing of the Belvedere Palace, served as the key clue for uncovering a deeply concealed network within the papal administration. Before we proceed to a detailed reconstruction of the structure of this conspiracy, its funding mechanisms, the logistics of meetings in restricted zones, and the reasons for its ultimate collapse, subscribe and thereby help the channel grow. The investigation of such incidents requires a strict analysis of documents, purified of later mystical accretions. Due to the absence of documents confirming the occult activities of this group's members, we consider it exclusively as a highly organized political and financial alliance that used a specific location for conspiratorial purposes. The political anatomy of the Papal States during the pontificate of Innocent VIII, elected in 1484, is characterized by a critical destabilization of the fiscal system and a weakening of central executive power. According to consistorial reports from 1486 to 1488, the annual deficit of the Apostolic Chamber's treasury ranged from 35,000 to 42,000 gold ducats. To cover this deficit, the pontiff resorted to the large-scale sale of official posts in the College of Abbreviators and the Apostolic Chancery, which led to the creation of autonomous bureaucratic clans beyond the Pope's control. Sources indicate that the social composition of the conspirators, who chose the Vatican Gardens as their operational base, was formed from 3 main strata. The first stratum consisted of junior officials and scribes of the Curia, whose incomes sharply decreased after the introduction of new fees for the issuance of papal bulls in 1487. The second stratum was represented by appointed individuals from the Roman nobility, specifically the junior branches of the Colonna and Savelli families, whose ancestral holdings in Lazio were under threat of confiscation in favor of the Pope's nephews, nepots. The third stratum was formed by diplomatic agents of the Kingdom of Naples and the Duchy of Milan, who were interested in changing Rome's foreign policy course. The Vatican Gardens, occupying more than 45% of the Vatican Hills territory, became a space for their coordination, not because of their sacral status, but due to the specifics of their security. According to the regulations of the Papal Guard from 1482, patrols of the garden's interior by a force of 12 mounted guards ceased precisely at 2200, after which surveillance was only maintained at the external gates, such as the Porta Pertusa and the Porta Angelica. This created a 6-hour window of complete operational freedom within the perimeter of the walls of Leo IV. The physical space of the Vatican Gardens in 1488 differed significantly from the modern landscape and consisted of a densely overgrown area combining sections of formal plantings, vineyards, and extensive zones of abandoned terraces surviving from the early Middle Ages. In the central part of the gardens lay the complex of the so-called Old Grottoes, partially carved into the hill's tough rock, adjacent to the ruins of the ancient circus of Caligula and Nero. According to the construction reports of the Apostolic Chamber from 1478, these structures were in a dilapidated state and were officially closed to visits by Curia clerics, making them an ideal place for housing the conspirators' material base. The logistical advantages of this location were enhanced by the presence of an extensive system of underground aqueducts and drainage channels laid under Pope Nicholas V in 1450 to divert groundwater from the foundations of St. Peter's Basilica. These tunnels, ranging in height from 1.5 to 1.8 meters, connected the inner perimeter of the gardens with the outer slopes of the Vatican Hill beyond the walls of Leo IV, emerging at the Tiber riverbank near the location of private docks controlled by the Guild of Roman Boatmen. Due to the absence of documents indicating any engineering inspections of these passageways between 1480 and 1488, the conspirators were able to freely deliver weapons, provisions, and encrypted correspondence into the guarded residence, bypassing the main checkpoints and posts of the Swiss mercenaries. According to the interrogation materials of Guard Matteo Bartoli from January 18, 1489, over a 12-month period, at least 15 crates of cargo were transported through the northwestern drainage collector. These were marked as construction stone for the repair of the Belvedere Palace, but actually contained elements of military equipment. The internal hierarchy and recruitment methods of the organization adhered to strict rules of secrecy, borrowed from the practices of the medieval secret tribunals of the Holy Vem and the charters of closed guilds of master craftsmen from Germany. According to an analytical memorandum by the papal legate Cardinal Giovanni Francesco della Rovere, compiled in March 1489, the core of the conspiracy consisted of 7 individuals who called themselves the College of Masters. Each member of this college personally supervised no more than 3 agents of the next level, who, in turn, had no information about the existence of other cells. The recruitment process took from 3 to 6 months and included a mandatory stage of financial and compromising background checks. A potential candidate from among the junior notaries of the Apostolic Signatura was first engaged in performing unofficial tasks related to copying confidential documents for monetary compensation that exceeded their standard salary by 4 times. After documenting the act of transferring secret information, which could serve as grounds for arrest and subsequent physical suppression by papal justice, the candidate underwent an initiation ritual. This ritual was conducted at night in the grotto of St. Martha. The candidate was blindfolded when passing through the Porta Pertusa gate, and then led through underground galleries to the meeting place. The system of oaths used in the organization is detailed in the court records of the Inquisition tribunal. The oath was sworn on an ancient marble bas-relief depicting a Mithraic ritual discovered during excavations in the gardens in 1485. The oath text obligated the member to keep absolutely secret the names of coordinators, encryption methods, and the locations of financial reserves. In case of oath violation, the guilty party was to be eliminated by specially appointed executors from among the mercenaries, with the conspirators' contracts allocating a fixed sum of 50 gold ducats for each such operation. The technical aspects of ensuring secure correspondence within the organization deserve separate analysis from the perspective of historical paleography and cryptography. The conspirators completely abandoned the use of standard Latin abbreviations and the substitution ciphers common in 15th-century diplomatic practice, which were based on simple letter transposition. Instead, they implemented a complex polyalphabetic cipher developed based on the works of Leon Battista Alberti, but enhanced with a system of dynamic keys. Each encrypted message consisted of 3 structural elements. The first element was the plain text, composed in the form of a domestic or administrative letter, for example, a report on the purchase of 250 measures of olive oil in the province of Umbria, or on the state of vineyards in the Frascati region. The second element was the hidden text, applied between the lines of the plain text using sympathetic ink made from a mixture of alum, white onion juice, and distilled vinegar. This text became visible only by lightly heating the parchment over the flame of a pure beeswax candle, which left no soot. The third element was the cryptogram itself, which was a set of numbers and Latin letters arranged in the margins of the document under the guise of merchandise cost calculations. Decryption required a special copper plate with 16 square cutouts, which was placed over the text at a specific angle, depending on the date the letter was sent. If the letter was sent on the 10th of the month, the plate had to be rotated 90 degrees clockwise. If on the 20th, by 180 degrees. According to a report by the papal cryptographer Bernardo di Santa Margherita, dated February 4, 1489, deciphering a single intercepted sheet took the chancery up to 48 hours of continuous work by 3 specialists, which significantly reduced the responsiveness of the papal special services in the initial stages of the investigation. The financial logistics of the conspiracy constituted a branched network integrated into the international banking system of Renaissance Italy. An analysis of the account books of the Roman banking houses of Spanozzi, Torlonia, and the Florentine Medici consortium for 1487 and 1488 allows for the reconstruction of the money flow scheme. Direct transfers from the sovereign funds of the Kingdom of Naples to the names of the Roman conspirators were impossible due to strict oversight by the Apostolic Chamber, which monitored all major receipts from border states. To bypass this barrier, a scheme of trade credit through intermediaries in the Merchants' Guild of the city of L'Aquila was employed. The Neapolitan crown, represented by Treasurer Donato Alfonso, transferred gold to the account of a merchant loyal to King Ferrante, allegedly for the purchase of 1,200 rolls of cloth in Flanders. These funds were then redirected to the Medici Bank branch in Lyon, from where they were returned to Rome in the form of bills of exchange to the nominal holder, the abbreviator Jacopo del Tocco. The conspiracy's financial records, discovered during a search of the house of the notary Stefano da Rimini, recorded the receipt of 4 major tranches. May 15, 1487, 5,500 ducats. September 12, 1487, 6,200 ducats. January 8, 1488, 7,100 ducats. And June 22, 1488, 5,500 ducats. The organization's total budget over 18 months amounted to 24,300 gold ducats. Expenditures were distributed as follows: 35%, 8,505 ducats, was allocated for regular payments to network participants, which was 3 times their official salary in the Curia. 25%, 6,075 ducats, constituted the fund for bribing personnel of the Papal Guard and Swiss mercenaries. 20%, 4,860 ducats, was spent on acquiring weapons and light Milanese-produced chainmail. The remaining 20% was withheld as a reserve fund for unforeseen expenses or the need for emergency evacuation of the families of key conspirators. A critical audit of the historical sources concerning this case requires a detailed deconstruction of the investigative materials, consolidated into an archival complex known as Codex Vat Lat 8743. This collection of documents consists of 314 sheets of thick parchment, bound in pigskin at the beginning of the 16th century, and includes interrogation protocols, records of confrontations, physicians' conclusions on the condition of the accused, and drafts of indictments. When comparing these records with independent sources, such as the personal diary of the papal master of ceremonies, Johann Burchard, and the dispatches of the Milanese diplomat, Giacomo Trotti, profound structural contradictions are revealed, stemming from the specifics of the investigative methods of the medieval Inquisition and the political context of the era. The protocols from March 12th, 14th, and 18th, 1489 describe in detail the confessions of the accused regarding performing heretical rites on the territory of the Vatican Gardens, classified as desecration of the sacraments and worship of ancient idols. The accused claimed that they sacrificed black roosters on the ruins of Nero's circus and read liturgy texts backward with the aim of causing the physical suppression of Pope Innocent VIII through witchcraft. However, a paleographic analysis of the text reveals that these confessions were recorded according to a single template, almost verbatim matching the formulas of inquisitorial processes against witches in southern Germany, published in the treatise Malleus Maleficarum in 1486. On sheets 89 and 92 of Codex Vat Lat 8743, traces of the mechanical removal of the original text are clearly visible, over which testimony of devilish rituals has been inscribed in ink of a different composition. Physical examination of the parchment under ultraviolet light allows for the restoration of the notary's original records made during the interrogation of the defendants at the first stage of the investigation, when the third-degree torture procedure had not yet been applied to them. These records indicate that the defendants gave strictly pragmatic testimony of an economic and geopolitical nature. They admitted to facts of transferring plans for the placement of artillery batteries on the walls of Leo IV to the Neapolitan side, discussed the size of bribes for the chief of the guard at the Porta Pertusa, and coordinated lists of individuals prepared to support the entry of Neapolitan troops into Rome. Thus, the inclusion of charges concerning mystical practices and ancient rituals in the gardens in the official indictment was a deliberate falsification developed by the investigative commission under the leadership of Cardinal Rodrigo Borgia. The purpose of this falsification was to transfer the case from the category of political rebellion, where the defendants could hope for the intercession of their secular patrons and sovereigns, to the category of a religious crime against the faith, which automatically annulled any legal guarantees, excluded the possibility of an appeal to a secular court, and ensured the guaranteed confiscation of all material assets in favor of the papal treasury. The methodology for conducting interrogations in the Castel Sant'Angelo in 1489 was strictly regulated by papal constitutions. However, under the circumstances of uncovering a conspiracy against the pontiff himself, the investigative commission regularly exceeded the established limits. According to the protocols, 3 successive stages of physical coercion, called the degrees of truth, were applied to the suspects. The first degree involved the demonstration of torture instruments and a detailed description of their function by the prison executioner, which, according to the notary's records, led to guilty pleas from 4 junior clerks within the first 24 hours after arrest. The second degree involved the use of the strappado procedure, in which the suspects' hands were tied behind their back, after which they were hoisted by a rope through a pulley to the ceiling of the cell and then abruptly dropped, stopping the fall about 1 meter from the floor. This method resulted in the dislocation of shoulder joints and the tearing of muscle tissue. In Codex Vat Lat 8743, on sheet 112, a note by the curial physician Giuliano di Forli survives, recording that the abbreviator Jacopo del Tocco was subjected to the strappado procedure 3 times in a single day on March 16, 1489, which led to a complete loss of sensation in his upper limbs. The 3rd degree of torture, applied exclusively to individuals who refused to admit to charges of treason and heresy, combined the use of iron shin clamps and the measured pouring of salt water through a canvas cloth into the respiratory tract. An analysis of the dynamics of changes in the suspect's testimony under the influence of these methods demonstrates a direct correlation between the intensity of physical pressure and the degree of fantasticality of the admitted facts. If during the first interrogation without the use of force the defendant denied any connection with Naples, then after the 2nd degree he admitted to transferring letters, and after the 3rd degree he agreed to all points proposed by the Inquisitor, including participation in nocturnal gatherings in the Vatican Gardens, summoning demons, and signing contracts with the forces of evil. This circumstance completely devalues the substantive worth of the indictment as an objective historical document and forces it to be considered as a monument of political propaganda and legal manipulation from the Renaissance era. Organizing the operational activities of the conspirators within the Vatican Gardens required a detailed knowledge of the internal regulations and vulnerabilities of the papal defense system. The security of their meetings was ensured by integrating the conspirators into the structure of the Apostolic Palace's guard service. In 1488, the security of the Pope's residence consisted of 3 independent units: the Swiss Guard, 150 strong, responsible for the inner chambers and main entrances; the Papal Halberdiers, 80 strong, patrolling the courtyards and external galleries; and a light cavalry of 60 horsemen, which rode patrol around the outer perimeter of the walls of Leo IV. The most vulnerable element of this system was the Vatican Gardens sector, whose protection, due to the large area of the hill, was dispersed. According to the archival records of the guard commander, Captain Ulrich Rosen, during the night shift from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., only 4 stationary posts were set up in the gardens: at the Porta Pertusa Gate, at the Tower of John XXIII, at the entrance to the Grotto of St. Martha, and at the Belvedere Palace. The conspirators used a system of bribing the duty officers, which was carried out through the mediation of a Roman jeweler who had established contacts with the mercenaries. The cost of ensuring free passage through the post at the Grotto of St. Martha was 15 gold ducats for 1 night, equivalent to 2 months' salary for a regular halberdier. On the nights scheduled for meetings of the College of Masters, the bribed officer would assign a sentry from among the trusted mercenaries to the post, who received 2 ducats and clear instructions to ignore any movement of persons in dark cloaks towards the old, tough grottos. The start time of the meetings was strictly fixed at 11:30 p.m., immediately after the evening roll call of the guard personnel, and all operations were to cease and participants evacuated by 3:30 a.m., before the morning round conducted by the duty corporal. The elimination of the underground network occurred not as a result of a large-scale special operation by the papal secret services, but due to a random failure in the conspirators' logistical chain, exacerbated by the bureaucratic rigidity of the Vatican's defense system. On January 11, 1489, at 10:15 p.m., at the Porta Pertusa Gate, which provided access to the western sector of the Vatican Gardens, a minor clerk of the Apostolic Datary, Pietro Paolo, who acted as a courier between Cardinal Savelli and the operational cell leader Jacopo del Tocco, was stopped for a standard inspection. The reason for the delay was that his night pass, issued by the Vatican prefect's chancery, was stamped with an administrative seal whose validity had expired on December 31st, 1488. Due to the start of the new year 1489, all passes were subject to mandatory re-registration in the first 10 days of January. But because of holidays and the negligence of the conspiracy's coordinators, Paolo had not received the updated document. The duty officer of the shift, Lieutenant Hans von following a strict order to prevent the smuggling of Neapolitan goods, refused to let the clerk into the gardens and demanded a bribe of 2 bolognini to conceal the violation. Pietro Paolo's lack of small change and the signs of panic he displayed, trembling hands, attempts to tear the leather purse he had on him, aroused the guards' suspicions. The lieutenant ordered Paolo detained and subjected to a personal search in the guardhouse. During the search, in the lining of his traveling cloak, between layers of thick woolen cloth, 4 sheets of thin parchment were discovered, completely covered with encrypted numerical rows, and a leather bag containing 200 gold ducats minted by the Neapolitan mint. The detainee was immediately taken to the dungeons of the Castel Sant'Angelo, where, during the first interrogation under the threat of physical coercion, he revealed the communication structure and provided the address of the safe house of the notary Stefano da Rimini in the Trastevere district. By January 15, 1489, the forces of the papal halberdiers had arrested 14 conspirators, which led to the complete paralysis of the entire organization and the cessation of its existence as a single coordination center. Parallel to the arrests of the operatives, the papal Curia conducted a large-scale financial investigation aimed at blocking the conspirators' supply channels. A key role in this process was played by the audit of the accounts of Roman banking houses, initiated by the papal treasurer Cardinal Raffaele Riario. Due to the absence of documents proving the direct involvement of the Medici bank's leadership in the conspiracy, the investigation focused on the actions of individual mid-level managers. During the inspection of the debt ledgers of the Roman branch of the Spanozzi Bank for 1488, anomalous financial flows were identified, linking Neapolitan exporters of grain and silk to the personal accounts of junior officials of the College of Abbreviators. The branch manager, seeking to protect the financial institution from possible asset confiscation and branch closures, opted for full cooperation with the investigation. On January 16, 1489, he handed over to the Papal Commission the originals of 7 bills of exchange totaling 12,000 ducats, which had been cashed over the previous 3 months by individuals from the entourage of Cardinal Savelli. This data allowed investigators to identify the names of key sponsors of the conspiracy among the Roman nobility and freeze their accounts until the completion of the legal proceedings. The financial blockade led to the immediate decentralization of the underground. The mercenaries who did not receive their next payment, scheduled for January 20th, refused to carry out orders for the physical suppression of high-ranking curial officials and began to leave Rome en masse, attempting to hide in the territories of neighboring states. An institutional analysis of this aspect of the conspiracy proves that economic vulnerability and dependence on centralized banking channels became just as significant a cause of the organization's collapse as operational errors in intelligence. The documentary finale of the conspiracy in the Vatican Gardens is recorded in the General Liquidation Inventory compiled by a special consistorial commission on May 4, 1491. This document, stored in the archive of the Apostolic Chamber, Fond Property of the Rebels, Folder 14, is an exhaustive list of material assets confiscated from the conspirators for the benefit of the papal treasury. According to this register, 14 residential buildings and commercial shops within Rome, 3 country estates in Lazio, 22,400 gold ducats in cash, discovered in caches at safe houses, 142 silver liturgical vessels, and items of domestic luxury, as well as a private library containing 84 handwritten codices, were subject to confiscation. A paleographic description of the library shows that 12 manuscripts contained translations of treatises on Arabic astronomy, alchemy, and geomancy, which allowed the tribunal to officially qualify the group's activities as heretical. The fate of the conspiracy's archives unfolded in 2 ways. The majority of operational correspondence and draft cipher notes were destroyed by order of the Pope in the Castel Sant'Angelo in 1493 during archive modernization. However, 3 folders with the most important interrogation protocols and originals of Neapolitan dispatches were placed in a closed section of the Vatican's secret archives, under inventory number 12C, where they remained inaccessible to researchers for several centuries. The political and legal consequences of the uncovering of this conspiracy had a profound impact on the evolution of the governing institutions of the Papal States and the structure of European criminal law in the late 15th and early 16th centuries. Pope Alexander VI, elected in 1492, used the materials from the 1489 trial to conduct a radical reform of the entire Vatican security system. The entire territory of the Vatican Gardens was removed from the jurisdiction of the prefect of the city of Rome and placed under the direct authority of a newly created office, the Magistrate of Plantations. This position, formerly concerned with the care of the garden's flora, was in fact the post of head of counterintelligence and internal security of the papal residence. The gardens were divided into 4 isolated defensive sectors, separated by additional 3-meter-high stone walls. Access to each sector was only possible with special metal tokens bearing unique engravings, which were changed every 15 days. All underground water conduits, drainage channels, and abandoned collectors from the time of Nicholas V were blocked with massive iron grates, the bars of which were no less than 5 centimeters thick. Their inspection by the engineering service became mandatory and was conducted once every 3 months. In the field of jurisprudence, the precedent of 1489 led to the issuance of a papal decree in 1490, which established that any unauthorized nighttime gathering of more than 3 people within the boundaries of the Vatican walls was automatically equated with the crime of first-degree crimen lese majestatis, lese majesté. This innovation completely stripped the accused of the right to canonical defense by the cardinal colleges, and church sanctuary, permitting the use of any forms of physical suppression against them without prior consultation with the consistory. The fate of the key conspirators was decided in accordance with the laws of political expediency of the Renaissance era. Cardinal Giovanni Battista Savelli, whose family possessed significant military power in Lazio, avoided a public trial due to pressure from his family, but was isolated in his ancestral castle in Riano, where his death in 1498 was recorded with signs of poisoning. The remaining 8 perpetrators, from among the junior clerics of the Curia and notaries of the Apostolic Signatura, were subjected to the procedure of death by hanging on the Ponte Sant'Angelo between March 12th and 15th, 1489. This served as a clear demonstration of the restoration of the Pope's absolute control over the internal space of his residence.